Hello everyone, welcome back. So I am stuck in one of those uncomfortable phases where you are swinging from one vine to another and you get to the end of the vine and you let go and you reach for the next one and there's nothing there. By which I mean I was reading books and I finished them and now I am untethered. So I thought that I would make a short video just to talk about how I choose my next book and the stack that I have assembled here. I am actually reading one book. I meant to read it all the way through, but it has sort of become my in-between book, just not on purpose, just that's the way that it worked out. And I feel like as I read it, I will probably get into the groove of reading the whole thing. But it is J.B. Priestley's Literature and Western Man. Yeah. Isn't that nice? I'm probably the first person to have seen that in 50 years. But anyway, I started this and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, well, I'll just read it all the way through. And I've read about 142 pages so far. And I did read quite a bit, but I think that I got bogged down a little bit because the first chapters of this book are about authors I am not familiar with, such as Diderot and Moliere and etc., etc., Henry Fielding, Schiller, Goethe, Samuel Richardson. And I'm not really familiar with that period of literature, so after a little while I was kind of not discouraged or anything, just I wanted to move on to other things and read this every now and then. But I have a feeling that once I get further in, I will just start reading it and read it all the way through. So that is kind of what I've been reading in between. But I don't know a lot about that period, the 1600s, the 1500s, the 1700s. But anyway, so I have assembled a stack here of books, and the way that I do it is I walk around my room here, and I have another bookcase in my living room, and I have one in my kitchen. The one in my kitchen is all paperbacks. It's purposefully made for paperbacks, not made for me, but I found it for $11, and I knew what it was instantly. I don't know if anybody else realized what it was, but I knew what it was. By the way it's made, it's just kind of a square with these slanting shelves and a backstop. And if you just stick one book on there, it'll fall through. But the one in my living room has hardcover nonfictions on it. And at the moment, so I've been a little in and out lately. And so Wednesday morning, I woke up at 4 something in the morning with this pain, and I knew what it was. I already knew what it was. So I have a long history of getting kidney stones, and I have a really high pain tolerance. And this one it's been bothering me for about several weeks now. But over the last little bit, it had been getting kind of worse. And it wasn't super painful or anything like that. It was just every now and then I would know it was there. And if you've had kidney stones, you learn to recognize the symptoms. And most of the time they're no big deal. They're little bitty and they pass on through. But I woke up at 4:20 in the morning and I had the pain round about here. And it was one of those fun pains that goes from the front all the way to the back and goes front and back. And then sometimes it'll be your whole side, and it radiates from the inside out. And it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse until it was the worst pain I ever had in my entire life. And then it got worse, and then it got a little worse, and anyway, I had to go to the hospital. They had to stick me on an IV and give me some pain medicine. And what was so odd about it is that, so I'd never had another kidney stone do that before. I had to go to the hospital for one once before, but it wasn't because of pain. It was because it was my first one and I didn't know what was happening. Uh, but I was actually kind of writhing in agony at one point, which I have never writhed in agony before, where everything just kind of gets right here, and that is your whole entire world, just that pain. And it was very interesting. I was there for a couple of hours, and then all of a sudden, just like that, the pain went away. It was like it had never been there, and I was just fine again. And it hasn't come back. And they gave me medicine and stuff, and but I still feel really worn out from that. And I haven't really recovered from that waking up so early in the morning and being in terrible pain for 2 hours. Like, that was just kind of an exhausting experience. What was my point in telling this story? Oh, right. So I don't want to read anything that is really heavy. I'm having trouble focusing on things. I'm not in pain or anything like that anymore. Um, but I just kind of want some relatively light reading. And I've been walking around the room for quite some time, and I just finished a book by Tony Hillerman called The Ghost Way. I don't really want to read another mystery. It was pretty good, by the way. I'll talk about that in a video coming up. Hopefully I'll be able to make a video right after this. I'm feeling pretty good right now. So I just thought I would show you what is on my stack. And there is one that's kind of heavy, I think, but just one. And it's a book I've been looking at for quite some time and thinking, oh, I really want to read that, but there are certain reasons I do and certain reasons I don't. So the stack that I have assembled right now is Sandstorm by James Rollins. So I really like James Rollins books. They are action-adventure novels. And there's always different scientists. Maybe you might have an archaeologist or a biologist, or maybe multiple different fields. And they're always going into jungles and going into ancient ruins or something like that. And this one, I believe this one takes place in Egypt, maybe? Let's see, we'll read the back here. An inexplicable explosion rocks the antiquities collection of a London museum, setting off alarms in clandestine organizations around the world. And now the search for answers is leading Lady Kara Kensington, her friend Safia Almaz, the gallery's brilliant and beautiful curator, and their guide, the international adventurer Omaha Dunn, into a world they never dreamed existed. A lost city buried beneath the Arabian desert, but others are being drawn there as well, some with dark and sinister purposes, and the many perils of a death-defying trek deep into the savage heart of the Arabian Peninsula pale before the nightmare waiting to be unearthed at journey's end. An ageless and awesome power that could create a utopia, or destroy everything humankind has built over countless millennia. Sandstorm. So that actually sounds really good. Now, they're not great literature or anything, and I think you can tell that they're a little bit cheesy sometimes, and there's always like one character who is secretly working against the team and all that sort of thing, and you never really know what the mystery they're going to discover is. That's really interesting what James Rollins comes up with. A lot of times it will be like a branch of humanity that has gotten trapped maybe in a valley where they can't get out, or maybe they have found something there and they have just stayed around it for thousands of years until they're totally separated from the rest of civilization. Or maybe they got trapped underground thousands and thousands of years ago and are living in a society all their own, something like that. Those were both plots of a couple of James Rollins' novels. Let me see if they have the... Okay, one was called Subterranean. That's the one where there's like a cave in Antarctica and they go down in it and they find people who have been living down there for tens of thousands of years, and their evolution has taken on its own uh, whatever, and they are different from people who live above ground, and they have their own society. And I think that I read Eyesight was pretty good too. It was about I just remember it took place in Antarctica, and they were being pursued by some kind of uh, animal. I think it was like a mutant, some kind of mutant, and there was a whole story there that was pretty good. Anyway, I like James Rollins' books. That's what I'm trying to say. I like his books, but they do all sort of follow the same premise. I don't care for his later books so much, like I can't remember the name. Is it Sigma Force? I don't know. I didn't care for those very much, and sometimes his dialogue isn't very good, but his adventures are pretty interesting. The next is the one I was talking about, the one that may just be too much, but I've been carrying it around and looking at it and going, I should read this. But one reason I haven't is because I am still in the middle of, and I have been in the middle of for years, Shelby Foote's trilogy of the American Civil War. I am to the last volume. What is it called? I think it's called Petersburg to something. I should know that. Well, anyway, my point is I actually started it about 8 years ago, and I read about 400 pages of it, maybe more than that. And I just kind of quit reading it, and I've been kind of loath to start other books about the Civil War while I am still technically in the middle of that book, even after all this time. But this is Landscape Turned Red, The Battle of Antietam by Stephen W. Sears. And so Antietam was the bloodiest single day battle of the American Civil War, and the bloodiest battle that the United States has ever been involved in. And I don't know a whole lot about it, just what I read about in Foote's trilogy. And, to be completely honest, I should really just restart that entire book and not worry about starting something like this, because it has been so long that I think it's safe to say I should just restart Foote's book. The next is They Were Expendable by W.L. White. And this is a war printing, so this is from 1942. I really like this style of art from that period, but I don't have a clue what it's called. You would see that in cartoons of the period, that sort of soft shading and everything. But this is about when the Japanese invaded the Philippines right after they attacked Pearl Harbor. Right after they attacked Pearl Harbor, it was almost simultaneous. This is about the PT boat squadrons and what they were doing at the time, and they took MacArthur they took MacArthur island hopping so that he could get on a plane and flee for his life. I don't care for General MacArthur. He had an ego the size of a friggin' small moon, and I have never been impressed with him. Let me put it that way. I've always felt that he was not the irreplaceable man that the presidents thought that he was. That I just feel like he's entirely overrated, and that he got a lot of people killed for his own ego. Yeah. But anyway, this would be an interesting story, I think, and the truth of the matter is, it is probably chock full of wartime propaganda. It's probably full of racial epithets and racism, and that whole cranking up of the propaganda against Japan. So what I'm trying to say is, I wonder if the story of this, how factual it is, and how much is just making things look better than they were, and trying to get people to contribute to the war effort with war bonds and everything like that. The next one is a short story collection called Haunted Nights. It's edited by Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton. And this is from the Horror Writers Association. And let's see. This is all about Halloween stories. Halloween is the night the monsters come out to play. Long before its traditions became defined by mass-produced masks, blood-soaked horror films, and carved pumpkins, the murky origins of All Hallows' Eve lay rooted in dark festivals and black magic, in old fables of diabolical tricksters and murderous pranks, and in tales of cursed souls lost in purgatory, of vengeance and changelings. From sly modern narratives to haunting traditional stories, from the brutal to the experimental, these 16 stories brilliantly and terrifyingly explore the many facets, cultures, and traditions of our most provocative holiday. So let's see, are there any names you might recognize here? There are a lot of names in this I don't recognize. Some that I do. Stephen Graham Jones, Jonathan Mayberry, Brian Evanson, Paul Kane, Pat Cadigan, John Langan, John R. Little. There are more names in this that I don't recognize than I do recognize, and I'm not really familiar with the horror scene after a certain period of time. I used to read a lot of horror when I was younger, and specifically older horror from the 70s, 80s, 90s, the 60s. And when I tried to get into contemporary horror of my own period, there were a few authors that stood out. But a lot of the contemporary writers that I was reading at the time, I was reading their stories from the 70s and the 80s instead of the stories they were writing at that moment in time. And I don't know what it is, but I have never really cared for the horror of the last, 15, 16, 17 years. It just, in a few cases it did click with me and I did like it, but a lot of it just kind of felt like a rehashing of older stories, or that it was lacking in quality, which is true of other periods too. But I've just never been into the contemporary period regardless of what I'm reading, or what genre I'm reading. I mean, just, I'm not really one of those people interested in the current times and everything like this. So this next book is one that I picked up for $1 a couple of years ago. It was on clearance, and I don't really have any interest in part of the subject. So this is Eating the Flowers of Paradise by Kevin Rushby. One Man's Journey Through Ethiopia and Yemen. And this is from the early 2000s. Okay, this is from 1999. And this is about his journey. Well, let's read the flap. Lured by idyllic memories of ancient cities, spectacular mountains, and, most of all, dreamy afternoons spent chewing the psychoactive leaves of the cat tree, Kevin Rushby set out to travel the old cat road from the highlands of Ethiopia to Yemen. It was to prove a fascinating and dangerous journey, peopled with an extraordinary array of characters: criminals, Islamic scholars, an exorcist, and the mysterious Cedric, the traveling companion from hell. Cedric, the traveling companion from hell, almost makes this sound worth reading just to find out, because you can have some god-awful traveling companions. Eating the flap, sometimes they're even in your own family. Don't tell anyone I said that. Eating the Flowers of Paradise, sometimes they're even you, in hindsight. Eating the Flowers of Paradise combines classic travel writing with an explanation of the rich and varied culture surrounding the drug cat. Legal in the UK, I wonder if that's still true 24 years later, 25 years later. Legal in the UK, but banned in the US, experts variously claim it to be as mild as tea or as addictive as cocaine. Well, there's a huge difference there, and one should be able to figure that out. If it's as mild as tea, you would know. And if it's as addictive as cocaine, you would know. In the Yemen, It is central to the life of the country, and as he goes, Rushby explores our attitudes towards substance abuse and addiction. Let's see. Kevin Rushby taught English in Sudan, Malaysia, and Yemen before becoming a full-time author and photographer. There's no picture of him. So, but that sounds really interesting. I think it's called Cat. It's spelled Q-A-T. I'm pretty sure it's just pronounced Cat. I would be more interested in this just for the travelogue parts, because I really don't know much about Ethiopia or Yemen. And even though it's 25 years old, I mean, the geography and things don't change. And I'm interested in places from different periods of time anyway. So, but the drug Cat in particular, I really have no interest in. You know, I used to have several books about drugs and things like that. And I just lost all interest after a certain point. So I don't really have any more. I don't really have them anymore. This is the last one that I have. And really I kept it because I am more interested in the travelogue for Ethiopia and Yemen, and in Cedric, the traveling companion from hell. And that might be something worth reading right now. And the last one on the stack is Dark Cities, edited by Christopher Golden. So this is a anthology of horror stories from 2017. And see some of the stories here. In Stone by Tim Leben. The Way She Is with Strangers by Helen Marshall. Goodnight Prison Kings by Cherie Priest. Hope I pronounced that right, her name. Dear Diary by Scott Sigler. What I've Always Done by Amber Benson. Grit by Jonathan Mayberry. Dark Hill Run by Casey Lansdale and Joe R. Lansdale. I like Joe Lansdale quite a bit. The Maw by Nathan Ballingrud. The Society of the Monsterhood by Paul Tremblay. The Stillness by Ramsey Campbell. I have had an up and down relationship with Ramsey Campbell's books, so I've really enjoyed some of them. I've really enjoyed his short stories. I have noticed that as his books, and again, this is an example of what I was talking about, but as his books came closer and closer to our own contemporary times, as I really liked his work from the 70s, from the 80s, even the early 90s, but as we got into the thousands, I find that his later work becomes very kind of work-oriented and tedious to an extreme, to the point where you wonder, it just seems very tedious and unrealistic, and characters sort of do things that you don't think they would do in real life. I really, really like his short stories. His collection, Alone with the Horrors, which is a collection of his stories from over his career up until the early 90s, is really good and one of my favorites. I haven't read it in a long time, but I should probably go back and reread that. One of my favorite stories of his is called Macintosh Willie. And if I tried to explain what that is about, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. There is not really a Macintosh Willie, so it's about these kids in London, or at least a city in Britain, but I'm pretty sure it takes place in London in the 70s or 80s. And at the park there is like a little building there with maybe some bathrooms in it and a roof, you know. And some kids have like spray painted their names Mac, Tosh, and Willie. And the kids start to think about this, like, there is a guy, maybe like a vagrant living there, or maybe not. And they start calling him Macintosh Willie. And the like legend of Macintosh Willie sort of takes on a life of its own, and it's about this kid and his experience with this legend. And I really like that story. I need to reread it. Clearly, I'm a little rusty on that story. Anyway, let's see what the back of this says. In shadowy back alleys, crumbling brownstones, and gleaming skyscrapers, cities harbor unique forms of terror. Here lie malicious ghosts, cursed buildings, malignant deities, and personal demons of every kind. 20 of today's most talented writers bend their skills toward the darkness, creating brand new tales guaranteed to keep you awake at night. So that sounds really good. And I think right now I'm sort of in a mindset to read short stories. I've kind of had trouble on the channel talking about short story collections and anthologies because I don't know, I have a hard time knowing which stories to talk about and how deep to go into those stories. So I either come away feeling like I have said too much about the stories or not enough. Or, I've watched my videos back. I watch my videos before I edit them just to make sure, just to edit out like sneezes and things like that and to make sure the audio is okay. And to edit out the periods where I'm just kind of staring off into the distance like this, trying to remember a word or a title or something. And I lost track of what I was saying. I lost track of my thought. Isn't that nice? I completely lost track of that thought. But anyway, that's what it is. I don't know exactly how to talk about short story collections, so I have sort of shied away from reading short stories over the last year. And that stinks because I really like short stories. They are my favorite form of fiction. And I really like how in 20 pages or so you can get straight to the heart of the story without all the meandering of a novel, where you have to introduce the characters and their relationship together. Whereas in a short story, you can just throw these people together and give a little, and masters of the short story will make you understand the characters very quickly and sympathize with them or hate them or whatever. And then, they introduce the plot of the story and the villain or the dramatic elements. I really like short stories, and I just need to know how to talk about them in a better way. And so I think most likely I'm probably going to read stories out of these two books, and I may read them all together and I may not. That's where I'm leaning right now. But anyway, this video has gone on long enough. I just wanted to say hello and let you know what I'm thinking of reading, my thoughts on reading currently, and just ramble for a little while and say hello and everything. And I want to thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.